Bionicle. It's pretty good. It is so hard to find new things to say about Bionicle of all LEGO themes, because what do I even say that hasn't already been said a million times? It is not only one of LEGO's most iconic themes, but one of its most important as well. It was a massive success, playing a huge part in saving the company from bankruptcy, whether they wanted it or not. It gave us a story and a world on a scale unlike anything LEGO had really attempted before. And it not only got people engrossed, but truly involved. People love to poke fun at Bionicle's maybe overly complex and deep lore, but creating lore like that for a LEGO theme of all things is nothing short of pure genius. The process of creating your own characters and theory crafting how they would add to and interact with the Matoran universe was unbelievably addicting. I mean, you know for a fact I had dozens of characters when I was a kid, who were way cooler and more powerful than the Toa, but did not fuck with them, because every single one of them was a badass lone wolf type character. Now, despite my affinity for Bionicle, I was very, very late to the party growing up. I didn't get my first Bionicle until 2008, only 2-ish years before the plug would be pulled on the first generation of Bionicle. Still, late to the party or not, I was ride or die for Bionicle. I loved the '08 sets that I did have. I had every single 2009 set except for the rather forgettable Agori, and I even had all of the Bionicle stars. In fact, I was thinking about that era of Bionicle so much that I went and got a couple of my old Bionicle '08 and '09 parts and I made a little guy. Neat grade, I think he's wonderful. I don't think he meant to do that. The ball and socket system featured so heavily in Bionicle is unbelievably iconic, and it's still prevalent even today. But there's no denying that it's been a bit of a bumpy ride, to put it lightly. So, how did we get here? LEGO's always had a pretty good thing going with this attaching bricks to other bricks malarkey, but no matter how you slice it, that's only going to get you so far. And a lot of their ways of attaching things to things in other ways have been a little bit hit or miss. Technic was a pretty successful endeavor, even early on, but then you've got stuff like these finger joints, which are cool but fragile, and unfortunately the friction in them isn't super consistent. Still, regardless of how successful these attempts were, a common theme with these old forms of articulation that LEGO would try is that they were limited to a single axis. I mean, you can see this in a lot of those old LEGO space mechs, bless them. They're wonderful in their own merits, but there's no denying that they are mostly art and not a whole lot of articulation. Their limbs are usually pretty static, and there's a good reason why they often use these swivel legs or wheels, because anything else LEGO could have tried would have had the carrying capacity of a wet French fry. However, in 1999, LEGO would finally find a solution to this with the ball and socket system that we know today, introduced in the Throwbots or Slicers theme depending on where you are. And it also showed up in the Droid Developer Kit, I guess. It's in there somewhere, I don't care. He's not as cool as the Throwbots, sorry. The Throwbots introduced two pieces featuring sockets for this new system, those being the Technic Axle Connector 2x3 with ball joint socket, and the Technic Pin Connector block 3x3x1. Which are probably better off referred to as the Bionicle handpiece and the other Bionicle handpiece. That one gets discontinued pretty soon, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but they got him.
What does that mean?
I liked him too.
Wait, what do you mean they got him?
I think Throwbots was a relatively successful outing for this new system. I don't own any of them myself, but I did get my partner one of the Throwbots, and she likes him. She said he looks like Funky Kong, which is, yeah, I can see it, that's fair. Unfortunately, the latter of the two pieces I mentioned, the block 3x3x1, is pretty weak when it comes to friction, but it's not all too bad. The Throwbots, when they had them, tended to have very light weapons, so you weren't putting a ton of stress on the parts, and at the very least you could lock them with the axles on the limb pieces, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. 2000 would be more of the same, with Robo Riders getting in on the action, and LEGO getting a little bit freaky deaky with Throwbots, making some bigger figures where these joints had to do a little bit more heavy lifting, to mixed results. However, 2001 would be the big test for this system, because, Bionicle happened. That was kind of a big deal. Still, I think they did a wonderful job with the first year of Bionicle, and they weren't overly ambitious when it came to overhauling the socket joints or anything like that. They worked just as well as they already did, and they didn't introduce a ton of new parts. The only new piece introduced with a socket was the Toamata foot piece, and it did what it needed to do excellently. Also, they stopped using that old block 3x3x1 as a shoulder piece, with the exception of a single combo model. This was also a great move. Again, I think this piece looks really cool when used as a hand, but there's just not enough friction in there for it to be used as a shoulder joint. Speaking of that combination model though, they did also do this thing where they tell you to put axles in the socket holes to attach pieces to each other. And they do that again in 2002. And they do it a couple times after. I do hate that. Don't know if it's illegal. It feels like shit. And I don't love that. 2001 also gave us a brand new color for that iconic socket piece in the new Irama, that being lime. 2002 and 2003 gave us more of the same. We'd get the old socket piece in new colors. The 3x3x1 block piece would appear again in 2002 but unfortunately be discontinued. And we got a new piece, the Borok foot piece, which featured a socket. Overall, it was more of the same. But I think it's about time we addressed a fairly notable issue with the ball and socket system. That being its tendency to break. Over time, it's possible for the socket joints in these pieces to crack or even break. With the older batches of these pieces, this tends to be a fairly or even reasonably rare occurrence. I looked through my own collection to find old socket joints that had this issue, and I actually couldn't find a single one. And I wasn't exactly jumping to break one just to show it in this video. A much more common issue with these parts is the axle holes breaking. You can find examples of this everywhere, unfortunately. However, an issue with these older socket parts that I can attest to is their tendency to be a little bit loose. It's an issue that a few of my own models are definitely suffering from, and it's a real shame. These pieces are not only iconic, but they just kind of look cool as fuck in a way that a lot of their newer iterations just kind of don't. This piece is unbelievably cool and versatile, so knowing that a lot of them just haven't stood the test of time is really quite unfortunate. But hey, we got several years of Bionicle left. Let's see what LEGO does about this, going into 2004. When it came to the old socket pieces, 2004 was very much more the same. Sometimes they stand the test of time, sometimes they're the flopper. It is what it is. However, we did get several new pieces featuring these sockets. 2004 gave us the Technic axle and pin connector 2x5 with 2 ball joint sockets. Or the 5 long limb piece as we're going to call it from now on. That is too many words. Overall, this piece was pretty successful. It was used to good effect in the Toa Metro and the Vaki, and at least in my experience, it's been pretty resilient to cracks and breaking and holds up fairly well in terms of friction. 2004 also gave us this really interesting take on the old socket joint, featuring a parallel axle connector and a rubber pattern. All 3 of the 2004 Titans use this piece, each featuring it in different colors both for the plastic and the rubber. It's ideal for making longer limb pieces, which is exactly what it was used for in Taragaduma and Nivok, and would continue to be used for in sets like Rudaka in 2005 or Brutaka in 2006. However, in terms of build quality, this piece seems to be a little bit hit or miss. Sometimes the friction is fantastic, and sometimes it's absolutely terrible. This one here is held up quite nicely, but I have heard people report pieces like this just have little to no friction whatsoever. It's tricky, it's hard to say how successful this piece was or not, because it only made 20 appearances over the course of 3 years. 2005, however, things take a bit of a turn with the introduction of the 7 long limb piece. This piece is a little bit notorious for being noticeably more fragile and prone to cracking than its 5 long counterpart. This I have experienced, especially with some of the transparent iterations of it introduced in 2006 with the Toa Ignika, which are even more prone to cracking still. I'd love to show you some Anika or Paraka with these new limb pieces, but I unfortunately don't own any. My friend does have one of the Paraka, but funnily enough when she brought it, it just mysteriously had an Anika torso. So next time I see her, I have to do top surgery on a Bionicle. I'm really doing my bit. Despite these issues, it's not egregiously bad. As long as you're fairly gentle with the parts and you're not just taking them apart and putting them back together over and over again, you should mostly be fine. And hey, it's a cool part, and thanks to the Vizirac, we got it in a lot of cool colors too, like orange, medium blue, and lime. Now 2006 was a huge year for Bionicle. It gave us the Parakarap, it gave us... I don't know, man, it gave us the Parakarap. What else you want? But another thing 2006 did was try to tackle the issue of friction in certain Bionicle joints by introducing these piston pieces. These pieces are still around today, and they were primarily introduced to improve stability in larger figures. A noble cause, considering some of their previous efforts could have really used that. I won't lie though, I think a lot of the time in Bionicle, the use of these piston pieces is kind of baffling. Like, yeah, they massively improve stability in the ankles and knees, but then the same sets that have these piston pieces just, like, won't do anything about the waist. Like, that's still just one ball joint. You gonna do anything about that? I don't know, it's just kind of strange to me. It's like giving Granddad a Thigh Master when his hip is on the verge of shattering. I think we're missing a step here. Reinforcing hip connections has always been a bit tricky for LEGO when it comes to Bionicle. Some of their larger titans do it just fine, but some of their efforts are downright terrible, like with Tuma in 2009, where his leg articulation is massively hindered and he can barely move them backwards whatsoever. All things considered though, I think LEGO did a pretty great job with the ball and socket system throughout Bionicle. I mean, before I made this video, I made a little combination model combining a set from 2001, Pohatu, and 2007, Dakar. And at no point during its construction was I nervous about, taking pieces out of those sockets and putting them back together. The whole thing was pretty smooth. Oh shit, yeah, Bionicle 2007. How's that one go again? You're a kid coming out of a Toys R Us in 2007. Mommy let you pick out anything from the Bionicle shelf, and you picked this disgusting green freak who you're pretty sure is called Eric. You get home, and you start building him. You're just bursting with excitement, thinking of all the cool little scenarios that Eric and your other Bionicles are gonna get into. You start building him, but then, all of a sudden... Dude, that shit broken. 2007 is often regarded as one of Bionicle's best years, and for good reason. The Toamari and the Baraki gave us our first canister sets in ages to not be copy-paste jobs with different colors and weapons. We got some excellently made Matoran, my personal favorites we ever got from Bionicle, and we got some genuinely excellent Titan builds. However, even this year of Bionicle is not without flaw, so I think it's about time we address the green elephant in the room. Lime joints. Lime joints in 2007 are notoriously fragile and brittle, and very often won't survive the building process of the sets comprised of them fresh out of the box. Buying a brand new sealed set featuring these lime joints is like entering the fucking lottery, and buying a used one is like trying to enter the lottery with a ticket that already lost 2 months ago. You are playing a dangerous fucking game. This is the result of a production error, but even to this day we're not completely sure what that production error was. The most common theories seem to be it's either a cooling error, or the result of microscopic air pockets forming in the plastic due to the dye and the polymer for the plastic not correctly forming together, or the bond breaking down over time. It's kinda hard to say, especially since lime as a whole hasn't exactly been entirely affected in the same way the joints were in 2007. I was mostly into LEGO Mars Mission in 2007, and the alien builds for those sets featured tons of lime, and that never came back to bite me whatsoever. Those bricks held up just fine. You might be wondering how big of a deal this really is, considering how rare lime joints have been up to this point in Bionicle, but LEGO really dug themselves a bit of a hole here. Despite the fact we've had multiple green Toa up to this point who don't feature any lime joints, like Leiwa, Matau, and Michael, we got 2 Toa in 2007 featuring lime joints. Harley in particular has 15 different sockets where those lime joints can go kaput. It's fucking rough. And just to rub salt in the wound, by some sheer comedy of errors, LEGO released this blooper of one of the main 2007 Bionicle animations where Harley literally just fucking falls apart. You can't make this shit up. All in all, 4 sets were affected by the brittle lime joints in 2007. Elec, Harley, Lesovic, and the Mobile Devastator from LEGO Exoforce. Oh god, I'm sorry Pookie Bear, I didn't want you to get wrapped up in all this. Now initially I wasn't sure if the lime joints in the Mobile Devastator were also brittle because there's just no real discussion around them, but I'm pretty sure they are. They're from the same fucked up batch or whatever it is. I found a video where someone builds an allegedly brand new Mobile Devastator, and once those lime joints come out, you can see one is cracked and one is on fucking life support. Holy moly. Now one thing I cannot stress enough is that it's only the 2007 lime joints that are fucked up and brittle. The ones in the Nui Rama from 2001 and Kilarax from 2005 are just fine. So while that would be an extremely annoying process, you could use pieces from those two sets to create much sturdier and more resilient versions of the 2007 sets. Unfortunately, there's one big loser here, and that's Elec. Elec's upper legs use the 5 long limb piece, and that piece in lime is completely exclusive to Elec. Without significant modifications, it is completely impossible to make a non-brittle Elec. You hate to see it. I guess one last thing that's worth mentioning before we move on to 2008 is that 2007 also gave us the 2x2 brick with a socket joint. This didn't appear in Bionicle outside of the system sets. It was also quite prevalent in LEGO Mars Mission and LEGO Exoforce, but this thing was pretty much on par with the old socket joints. It was nowhere near as brittle as the lime joints from 2007. It was fine. So LEGO fucked up the lime joints in 2007. Unfortunate, but not the end of the world. There's plenty of time for them to figure this out, and it is just an issue with one color after all, so it can't be that hard to fix. Still, LEGO figured they'd rather be safe than sorry, so going into 2008, they actually redesigned every single socket piece to make it a bit more stable. It was a pretty big undertaking, and I'd love to tell you it was a successful one, but... LEGO's redesign of these socket joints in 2008 is maybe one of their biggest manufacturing fumbles ever. They completely butchered it. This redesign was intended to make the sockets more sturdy and resilient to time, and to be fair, while if not cracked or broken, they tend to be a little bit more tight than the old sockets, good fucking luck finding one like that, because these will crack and snap at a moment's notice. Basically what LEGO did here was turn every single socket joint into a 2007 lime joint. It was absolutely wild.
And when everyone's one, no one will be.
Digging through my own collection for this video just proved to be a boulevard of broken parts. It was really quite unfortunate. But hey, look, LEGO tried their best to redesign the sockets, and I guess they just failed. It didn't turn out like they wanted it to. Unfortunate, but hey, they tried their best. Anyways, before we move on, how about we look at some prototype Bionicle 2008 builds for no reason in particular. Ooh, that's pretty cool. I like this guy. That's funky. Pretty neat, pretty neat. Ooh, now this guy. Ooh, this guy, he's a real winner. Oh look, a prototype version of Photok. How nifty. Hang on a second. God fucking damn it. So yeah, LEGO was well aware of how awful these parts were going into Bionicle 2008, but they just went ahead with it, I guess. And like, I kinda get it. If you're putting a 2008 set just together for the first time, then yeah, the parts will probably hold up just fine. Well, especially back in the day, but I don't know about now so much. But like, the 2008 Bionicle sets essentially just miss out on the ability to be taken apart and put back together to create new characters and different builds, because the pieces just won't fucking survive. I know a lot of people don't care for the 08 parts because of how big and chunky and specialized a lot of them are, especially for the Armatoran, but like, these are still LEGO pieces. You can find cool uses for them if you try hard enough. And like, for a lot of these pieces, there just isn't a non-fucked up and incredibly brittle version of them, and that's kind of really sad. As if that wasn't enough, on top of the inherent take it apart and build whatever the fuck you want ability of LEGO, LEGO were like actively encouraging you to take apart and put back together 2008 joints, because Bionicle 2008 had a lot of combo models, and some of them are very good, I'll give them that, but like, you really want to encourage people to fuck with these joints as much as possible? Like, this guy is barely bigger than a regular-ass Toa, and you need 4 fucking sets to make him. What are we doing here? It's just such a shame that this year Bionicle has this issue hanging over its head, because, man, Some of the sets from this year were so fucking good. But if you want to go back and get them today, you're most likely gonna have to just buy the set's brand new seal, which like, no thank you, I would like to eat this month. In 2009, LEGO took the if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach to Bionicle. An interesting move, considering it was broke. LEGO just doubled down on the old 2008 sockets in 2009, not just using them again, but making new parts with those same terrible sockets, like the new Glatorian hands, head, and maybe most frustratingly, these new 7 long limb pieces that had pin and axle connections on the side. If it, like, didn't fall the fuck apart, this would be an unbelievably useful piece. It's a shame that not only did it take so long to get something like this, but there's no non-fucked up version of this part and it only ever appeared in 5 sets total. It kinda sucks. Even more frustratingly, 2009 is where this new terrible socket really started to infect other LEGO themes. In 2008, most other LEGO themes outside of Bionicle got away with it. Exoforce mostly used the old socket joints, but the new one snuck its way into a few sets, like Chameleon Hunter. Now this new socket was just the standard, and it would sneak its way into themes like LEGO Power Miners, and in the upcoming year, LEGO Space Police, LEGO Toy Story, and LEGO Atlantis. I guess one thing LEGO learned going from 2008 to 2009 was not to actively encourage people to fuck with these parts by making combination models, since Bionicle 2009 only featured a single one, the Sandstalker, and lucky for them, it was a piece of shit, so no one would want to take their sets apart and make this anyways. Also, one of the 2 sets needed to make this model holds the dubious honor of being the only LEGO set I've ever owned to have a broken socket fresh out of the box. I got this set for Christmas in 2009, and one of the sockets on this 5 long limb piece was completely annihilated. This whole time I thought Santa's elves fucked it up, but no, that was on LEGO this entire time. Great. It's disappointing that LEGO did this, but in a way you can kind of see the logic behind it. 2009 was fully meant to be the final year of Bionicle, and the Bionicle stars in 2010 were only produced thanks to a push within the company to give Bionicle some kind of proper conclusion. And yes, the 2010 Bionicle stars also used those same terrible brittle joints, but that's not exactly surprising. Like, if they weren't going to make new reinforced joints for Bionicle 2009, they wouldn't do it for these guys, right? However, 2010 would give us a little bit of a glimmer of hope for the future. And that glimmer had a very, very strange source, that being LEGO Ben 10 Alien Force. Now, I'm fully aware that the LEGO Ben 10 sets are some of the absolute most poorly received LEGO sets in the ever, man. They fucking sucked ass. But what these sets did have was a bunch of new pieces, and a lot of those pieces featured a brand new build for the joints. Now these pieces absolutely have their issues. Thanks to the lack of axle or pin connectors, their ability to work with other LEGO pieces outside of the ball and socket system is incredibly limited. But still, there's no getting around the fact that the sockets on these pieces were fairly damn sturdy. Yes, they could still crack with repeated use, but I've never seen a full-on broken one of these pieces. I have a couple in my collection, and yes, a few are cracked, but for the most part they've stood the test of time. If nothing else, it was an interesting first step, and LEGO's second step into fixing the issue of brittle joints was really something else. 2011 was where everything changed, and LEGO gave us their definitive answer to the brittle joints that had plagued Bionicle's later years. That being CCBS, the Character and Creature Building System. This was not just a couple of Bionicle pieces with a few touch-ups here and there. No, this was a whole new fucking thing. Before, where there had been pinholes and axle holes, we got more balls and more sockets. And, like, these holes, whatever the fuck you call them. I know a lot of people really didn't care for CCBS, especially with how much simpler it was initially compared to the old Bionicle systems. But still, I was a really big fan of it. And I think it got off to a pretty great start in LEGO Hero Factory. Second year. What the fuck were they up to for the first year again? LEGO Hero Factory in 2010 is the most baffling shit in the world to me, because you were following up Bionicle and you're cooking this new fucking system that fixes the main issue with late Bionicle, and you're like, hey, let's leave this off with the fucking stars again. That'll tide everyone over. I'm not trying to be mean or nothing either. I do like LEGO Hero Factory, but the first year of this theme is one of the absolute worst first impressions I've ever seen a LEGO theme give. It's genuinely wild, and honestly, Hero Factory probably would have lasted a lot longer if they had just started in 2011. Year 1 of Hero Factory did absolute dick to address the issue of brittle joints. They did make new pieces, like the limbs for the hero figures, but these still use the same terrible joints. And they just used pieces from late Bionicle without changing a damn thing. They used the Glatorian heads and hands again, and they were still brittle. They made a small adjustment to those 7 long and 5 long limb pieces where they would extend the axle hole, similar to those limb pieces that had the axle and pinholes on the side, but this did absolute dick. The only thing you can give Year 1 Hero Factory for addressing the issue of brittle joints is that some of the villains used those Ben 10 limb pieces that broke less. That is literally it. And this is so wild to me, because, half the appeal of Hero Factory is that it's a hero factory, right? That you are making heroes to add to the world, similar to what you did with Bionicle, but just on a more simple and smaller scale. Adding to Hero Factory with your own heroes was fun, and from year 2 of Hero Factory onwards, it made perfect sense. It was such a easy to build with system, and yeah, it was simpler, especially starting out when there were just less CCBS parts, but it was still addicting, and even though most of my love lies with Bionicle, I have now and again made my own Hero Factory mocks, just because I felt like it and it was fun. But with Year 1 Hero Factory, you just can't fucking do that, because the parts will explode on you. Oh, and there's also a combo model. There is also a combo model, and if you build him, all your shit's gonna break, and the combo model's bad. Fuck! Hi, Big Yellow from the future, and the different lighting chiming in real quick, because it did occur to me while editing this, that I didn't say a single nice thing about Hero Factory in 2010, and I felt a little bad. Honestly, yeah, the heroes are atrocious. They're really bad. And it is unbelievable they did nothing about those sockets. But it's not all terrible. The villains were, competent sets. They were, mostly fine. Shoutouts to Rotor, in particular. Rotor is actually a great set. I fuck with Rotor heavy. He's, actually on par with a lot of those, mid-sized Bionicle Titans. You could have just dropped this guy in Bionicle 2009 and, minus his Despicable Me fart gun, he probably would have fit in just fine. So yeah, me and Rotor, we go way back. Low-key chill. It's not all bad. So yeah. Honestly, this isn't even me really being nice to Hero Factory 2010. I just like Rotor. And that's where he's from. But yeah. But look, LEGO made a fucky wucky again in 2010. It is what it is. At least we're out of the woods in 2011, right? Okay, so themes outside of Hero Factory were still getting stuck with the old joints, like Atlantis and Ninjago. Unfortunate, but, maybe they'll catch up eventually. But there's one fucker in Year 2 of Hero Factory who kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works. And that's Jetbug. Hero Factory in 2011 updated this old socket piece to be much, much stronger, in line with the CCBS joints, and while it is possible to break, you really don't see it happen that often. It's a really great piece. All 4 of the villain sets from this wave of Hero Factory use this piece, but for whatever reason, only 3 of them use the updated version. Jetbug features 5 of this piece, but at least for most Jetbug sets, it's the old 2008 joints, just as brittle as ever. Now, Bricklink does claim that there are renditions of Jetbug out there that use the updated joints, but I've never seen them. Mine didn't have it when I was a kid, and I haven't seen a single review or unboxing or anything like that that has the updated joints. And it's just such a weird decision. It almost feels like a bit of a deceptive attempt to use up leftover sockets, because Jetbug's earlier releases just straight up lie to you. His render on the box and his instruction manual both feature the new sockets. The one official piece of media where it seems they slipped up is Jetbug's model in the game Mission Ordeal or Fire, which you can just about tell uses the old 08 sockets. It's definitely a bit fucking cheeky, and while Jetbug is a good set, I do very distinctly remember being a bit pissed off because part of the reason why I bought him all the way back then was because I wanted more of that updated piece. And LEGO went and fucking swindled me. Also, on the topic of sets being updated to include these new CCBS joints, there was exactly one LEGO Hero Factory set from 2010 that did get an update like this to feature these new non-brittle joints. And it's kind of a hilarious pick. It's the Furno bike. And this is so funny to me, because not only are all the joints on Furno himself still brittle and terrible even in the updated version, but only one of the updated pieces actually gets a ball put into it. So the other one is just like stronger for no reason, kind of? It's kind of funny. And if you're wondering if like, oh, maybe this is just something Bricklink is claiming and it's not actually the case, no, I have seen an unboxing where like a brand new Furno bike has these joints. So yeah, thank you, LEGO, I think. Effort made? One last thing that Hero Factory in 2011 made very apparent was LEGO's concerns over these sets' ability to stand the test of time. 3 of the villain sets feature arm supports, and they are wholly unnecessary. Drilldozers is fine, Nitro Blasts is quite cumbersome, but Firelord's arm supports are very notorious because they are genuinely set ruining. Well, kind of, there's a lot wrong with this set, it's just like not good, but like this sucks, trust me. On top of being, again, completely unnecessary, they hugely restrict articulation in the arms, and trying to move them back whatsoever will just cause the arm supports to break. It is a huge error on LEGO's part, and makes the set significantly worse, but hey, this was their first large build that they made with CCBS. I guess they'll learn from it and not do it again. Oh, that's the same build in a later set. Okay, fuck it, never mind. Hero Factory's third wave in the latter half of 2011, and Hero Factory as a whole in 2012 would also get a little bit cheeky with it, bringing a lot of those old Bionicle parts back without updating their joints, specifically the Shadow Matoran feet for Waspix and Fangs in 2011, and the old Glatorian heads for tons of 2012 Hero Factory sets. They even printed it in a new color, trans bright green, but they never bothered to change the mold at all. Interestingly, Toxic Reaper from 2012 uses the old Shadow Matoran feet too, but they kind of actually updated the mold for them. Shadow Matoran feet using the new CCBS molds actually exist, but only appeared in later releases of Toxic Reaper. This is really strange because Toxic Reaper is the only set to ever feature these updated Shadow Matoran feet, and they're not even featured in every version of this one set. It's like even more exclusive than usual. It's kind of wild. 2012 also gave us these friction adders, which could be used to make limbs longer and also a lot stronger. This removed the need for stupid arm supports like we had seen in 2011, and you could also use them to potentially salvage old cracked Bionicle parts. However, I'm happy to report that 2012 was where those terrible socket pieces that had plagued late Bionicle, early Hero Factory, and so much more were finally laid to rest. In 2013, we did not see anything with those sockets at all. Both Hero Factory Brain Attack and the large Chima figures exclusively use CCBS parts, with a small handful of Ben 10 Alien Force parts sneaking their way in, which is close enough. 2014 gave us our last year of LEGO Hero Factory, Invasion from Below, and this one's a little bit fucked up, because yes, they exclusively use CCBS parts, so no issues there, but this wave of Hero Factory did have an issue of brittle parts, because of the fucking minifigure limbs breaking, which like, man, it all comes full circle, don't it? 2014 also gave us Mixels, which used a much smaller iteration on the ball and socket system. And LEGO were not risking shit with this system, because even to this day, these socket pieces have only ever been produced in light bluish grey and dark bluish grey. Absolutely nothing else. Which, yeah, it stands out on a couple sets, which is a little annoying, but for the sake of shit not breaking, I guess I'll take it. Bionicle G2 in 2015 and 2016 also had no issues, using exclusively CCBS, with the exception of a Ben 10 foot piece sneaking its way in there. Well, went off without a hitch in terms of, like, you know, parts not breaking. They did sell like shit, I think, but I really like those sets, so I don't really want to talk about that. And then, to wrap everything up, in 2017, we'd get new fucking sockets again. And I've never touched them in my damn life, but I think they're pretty strong and good. So, yeah, that's that. Bionicle and Hero Factory and so much more really has gone through the ringer. Bionicle had a good thing going, there's no way around that, but man, the issue with lime green joints in 2007 really got LEGO into a bit of a situation, and there's no way around the fact that it maybe shouldn't have taken them that long to get out of that situation. And when they did get out of that situation, I don't know, maybe they could have done getting out of it better, maybe? Still, even if it did fuck with a lot of LEGO sets I really liked and made building with things I liked as a kid a little bit irritating, it's still a really interesting part of LEGO's history. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed hearing about how Bionicle got all fucked up and nasty, and that's it. I'll catch you next time. Sometimes it feels like we're all living in Bionicle 2007, but you and me, we're the only ones with lime joints. Whoa, thanks for watching, and as usual, big thanks to my Patreons and channel members. I'm gonna get through this pretty quick because this was not a super long video, and there's a lot of you now, so let's get into it. Big thank you to ESN64, Prowless, Rob Womble, Charlie, Llamacat, Morpheus, Worston Show, TKLOS96, Royal Bunny, Luna Gale Master, Goldstorm 07, Silver Key 5, Reboot, Sombret, Henry Zelenka, Michael H, Richard Davis, Barno Beef Dip, Tear, The World 243, Johnny362,000, Memories Adrift, Frankie Mark, Another Ignored Beast, Eric, Ada Basilisk, Osiris, Doovie Zero, Lascole, Armop, Eric Lanning, TL Opal, Jam, Fretzy, Barely, Zero Gum, Strawberry, Ewan Phillip, Binglet On, J3, Metallicy, Pink Hat Boy, Rayo, Genny But She's a Bit Fruity, Wolftree, Ethan Hughes, Kai D, Excellent Tone, Wizard McMagic, Putnam, Snackerfork, Happy Calcium, Cordy, Bean Thing, Tailored Muffin, Flame P, Yon Sear, EBGB, 18 Quintillion Planets, Omilia, Armuda, CS, Daniel Drexler, Ben Gets Weird, Yoshinero, Isola Delfina, Kino, Sub, Phasing, PJ Schwa, Wolfrey, Stout Shaco, Old Man Han, Doctor of Journalism, Nigel O, Agwan, Erica, Jared Diamond, Lucy the Lamilla, Kibibit, Zon, Ash C. Adams, Bravely Typed, VV Venomous, Skeleton, Cram, Tamiyaki, Datsato, Pontobono 9, Invitas, Kobe Fawn, Mahogany, Sword Off Laser, Ernesto Flores, Robbie Shin, Braden Wist, January November, and Rosie YY. And of course, big thank you to my channel members too, Prowless, Mainza45, Posi, Dainuka, Pueg, Dandus, King Yef, Ami Kitsune, Vectas, Snowdrop, Kathy.uk, CK Eternity, and New Soup V. Thank you all so much, and yeah, I hope you liked the video. Bye!